dramatic shot there. Just thought I'd add a little production value to these videos right here. What a beautiful day it is here in England. The sun is shining and hear those birds tweeting. I mean, look at this. I think a lot of the time we think, oh, I'd love to get out into nature, but for some reason feel like we would have to book a holiday or something in order to go and do that. But nature is everywhere. It is right on your doorstep. I don't have a plan for today's video. I thought I would just hit record and see what we get. The illusion isn't there either. There's no illusion. There's no Maya. There's no appearance in consciousness. Look at this. There is no magpie. Wow. There is no matrix. There is nothing. How on earth can I make a claim like that? Well, let me explain. So right now, you're watching an image on a screen of a man talking. And you can hear the sound that is coming from the device or headphones that you are listening on. And because of the way that the technology works, because of the way that your senses pick up and receive the input, when you watch this man talking on the screen and hear the words, you feel in some way like I'm talking to you. But it's an illusion. What's actually happening is that the screen is lighting colours in a certain way, and the audio is reproducing the vibrations. The vibration that I speak into the camera is being reproduced and played into your ears in some way. And all of that coalesces into the singular experience of a man talking to you. And this happens automatically. Your brain does this for you. The technology working in conjunction with your brain does this for you. Now, until I'd just brought that illusion to your mind, you perhaps weren't as aware of it. You weren't as aware of the illusion. Obviously, you know there's not actually a little man in the screen talking to you. You know that. But the immersion was such that in some way you kind of forgot that it was an illusion. In some way, you sort of somehow looked past the fact that it's just a screen and just vibration coming in through either speakers or headphones. And it wasn't until I just pointed out that seeing and hearing something on a screen creates this illusion. It wasn't until I pointed that out that that became understandable. because you perhaps weren't even looking. You didn't want to see it as an illusion because you're trying to be immersed in the YouTube video. You don't want to see it as an illusion, you're trying to become immersed. It isn't until somebody points it out that it reveals itself to be an illusion. And then you go, oh yeah, well that's obvious. It's so obvious, it's just light on a screen and noise in my ears. Yeah, I know that, which is true, everyone knows that. It's not ignorance, really. It's not ignorant. Nobody believes there's a man in the screen talking. We know it's a reproduction, but you can suspend your disbelief enough to become immersed in the illusion and in some way forget that it's an illusion. Now, in spiritual teaching, what we try to point out is that actually your entire life kind of works in the same way. Your consciousness is aware of everything your senses pick up. Your consciousness is aware of everything you think, everything you feel, the sensations in your body, what you can hear, see, touch, taste, smell, everything. Also what you can think of, what you can remember, what you can predict, your whole imagination, as well as all the sensations in your body. And all of those things appear, in a sense, on a screen. What do I mean by that? Because you probably hear that and think, well, now I understand how the screen that I'm looking at is an illusion, but how can this also be an illusion? Well, somebody has to come along and point it out. If you think, the one thing that all of your experiences have in common. What is the one thing? Because you might think, well, you know, taste is very different from hearing. Smelling is very different from seeing. Having a negative memory is very different from the sensations in my foot. So these things are all a diversity, a multiplicity of things, perceptions, thoughts, feelings, and what we believe is an outside world. So, you would think all of these things are separate. But what do they all have in common? They all share one single thing in common. And this one single thing in common unifies the entire experience. So yes, the bad memory is very, very different. Experientially, it feels very different to the sensation in my foot. You can do this yourself right now. Have a bad memory or any memory arise and the sensation in your foot. Yeah, they seem very different. Two very different things, right? But what do they share in common? What is the thing that ties them together? They're both experienced. They are both experienced within consciousness. Now we'll start by saying your consciousness. So they are experienced by your consciousness. Now this is one of the things that we've overlooked. And when somebody points it out, you might go, okay, yes, but that's obvious. But was it so obvious? Because until I pointed it out, it kind of, you overlooked that part. You overlooked that part of your experience. You were focused on the experience. You were focused on the sensation, on the thought, feeling, perception, on the object. But you forgot that the thing that ties everything together, the whole show, the whole play, the thing that ties them together is the consciousness, the awareness. It's not possible to have an experience that you're not aware you're having. It's the only single constant thing that remains throughout your entire life. And this is the truth of awakening right now. This is awakening. This is enlightenment. It's the recognition of the reality of life, of your experience. everything is tied together into one single experience. And it's happening now. No past, no future. What is your consciousness now? Your consciousness now is aware of everything that you're experiencing. Can you bring together all of your experiencing within this moment? Don't worry about the past or the future. Leave that alone. Instead, we're experiencing now. What is the consciousness, the awareness in that moment? The conscious awareness in that moment is the screen and the headphones on which your entire life plays out. In deep states of meditation, this truth is clearly recognized and seen. How? By withdrawing the attention away from everything that you're experiencing. If you're not paying attention to any object, the subject also disappears. And it is the illusion of an individual that is the subject that is perceiving all of these objects. Let me break that down, because that was a lot. When you perceive everything in the outside world, as well as everything going on in the internal world, and let's start, just don't make a distinction between external and internal. Just don't really make that distinction, because everything is tied together in one singular experience, the experience of now. So, whatever you're perceiving, supposedly in the external world, happens in your mind, and whatever you're perceiving as a thought, experiencing as a thought, also appears in your mind. These are all just what I'm going to term objects that now appear in your mind. But those objects can only exist if there is a subject. And what is the subject? This body-mind. The focal point, which is what you are. The focal point. The focal point. The lens, the aperture, the vehicle, the vessel, whatever you want to call it, you can't deny that you are the singular, condensed experience. So, withdrawing attention from everything that we're perceiving externally as well as internally, we remove our attention away from the objects, and by removing attention away from the objects, we also remove the subject. The subject no longer exists, and that is awakening. When the truth is clearly seen that this individual body-mind was actually an illusion, just like I'm an illusion to you right now, speaking to you on a YouTube screen, listening to your listening through your headphones, that turns out to be an illusion. Exactly the same is true. Consciousness is the screen, the background awareness that is aware of the experience. By removing attention from the experience, it's like turning off whatever is playing on the screen, because without attention on objects, the subject also disappears. Therefore, the individual body-mind ceases to exist in that moment. That is what is meant in spiritual terms when we say you don't exist. Or the ego is an illusion, and that the ego death is the recognition of the truth, and by recognizing the truth, attention is pulled away from objects, the subject also dissolves, and your problems are over. Your stress is over, your troubles are over, your anxieties are over, everything you are worried about, and the entire world is over as well, because the entire world happens in your mind. And your mind is just an appearance on the screen of consciousness, so the world vanishes also. One who is awake also awakens everyone else. The awareness itself, the blank screen of consciousness, suffers nothing, does not suffer, is never troubled by anything, has no anxiety, has no depression, has no worries, has no troubles. The individual body and mind has a ton of troubles, stresses, worries and strifes. And also has a huge amount of love, joy, compassion and wonder. Positive things as well as negative. That is what the body-mind is subjected to. But if you've had enough of all this, if you've had enough of the suffering that this body-mind play contains, then it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. Wake up from the nightmare. You only wake up from a nightmare when it gets bad enough that you really want out. When it gets frightening enough that you go, no, I don't want to be in this anymore, and you wake up from the nightmare. That's what the awakening is. That's the enlightenment. It's simply a recognition of what's actually happening. In the same way, if you were watching a very scary YouTube video and were so immersed that you could feel it in your heart and your chest and you were starting to sweat and shake, and then you suddenly remember that you're watching a YouTube video, so you turn it off. That's exactly what happens in life when our suffering gets to the point where we've had enough of the whole thing. I don't like this story anymore. There has to be something else going on here, because the whole thing just doesn't really make any sense. That's when it's time to wake up. And that waking up, again, is the recognition, the reality of experience. Everything is an appearance within the open, empty, pure screen of consciousness. How to experience this for yourself. Simply cease paying attention to everything. Simple as that. A single pointing. Single pointing. A single practice. Simply do not pay attention to anything, external or internal, even the sensations in the body, because without attention they can no longer exist. I started this video by saying even the illusion doesn't exist, and that's what I mean, because when you finally get there, that's what you see. The colour continues, the sounds continues, but really get with this. There's no appearance either. By removing attention from everything, it can no longer exist. And that's not depressing. You would think that leads to just a complete checking out of life altogether, but it just doesn't work like that. You just realise that everything is a dream. Like lucid dreaming, except it's real. I sometimes consider this physical world that we perceive to be like hard imagination. It's just imagination, but it just has a few more rules tying it down, so it can't change as quickly as regular imagination. But I see it as hard imagination. That's the way that I tend to categorize the physical reality. Hard imagination, hard light. Hard light is probably a good way of putting it. But but I'm mixing my metaphors now, and that's a subject for another time. So, the illusion doesn't exist either. If you're spiritually stuck, if you're stuck on the spiritual path and you feel like you've hit a block, you feel like you've hit an impasse and you're trying to move forwards in your spiritual practice, even though you've attained quite a lot, what you've probably come up to attaining is recognizing that it's an illusion. But in some way, you're now trying to attach to the illusion. You've seen clearly, yes, I see that it's the Maya, but how do I get it to stop being so awful? Because I still suffer. Despite the fact I've seen the illusion clearly, why do I still suffer? There's no illusion either. Illusion is a word. Illusion is a concept. Withdraw your attention away from the concept of illusion, and the concept vanishes. Alright? Everything depends on consciousness perceiving it. If consciousness does not perceive it, it vanishes. We have this experience in deep sleep. Where does the world go? Hello, little squirrel fellow. Oh, he's gone. Thought he'd come and say hello. They sometimes come and sit on the bench with me and have a little satsang. I think that's everything I have for you today. Hope some of that was useful. That got quite deep for an unplanned one. The illusion doesn't exist either. That will be the spiritual bleach you need to clear that spiritual blockage. Have a play with that. No illusion either. Just as I'm not really on your screen right now, you're not really on your screen right now either. But the screen is the screen of consciousness. You're not there either. Neither of us are here. We share that in common, as well as infinite universal consciousness. We also share the fact that neither of us exist. Thank you so much for listening, team. That's everything I have for you today. Take care, be well, and stay present.